Today we're gonna talk about how to optimize WordPress for best speed and performance. My name is Christoph Konjarov. I'm part of the company for more than 13 years now, and I have started working on improving WordPress speed and performance and giving talks about that probably somewhere in 2012, 2013. Since then, a lot of people started paying more attention to speed and performance of their website, which is great. If you remember a few years back, it wasn't such a big topic that it is right now. Probably a very big part and very good role in that process played the team of Google that started adding performance and speed as a ranking criteria for their search engine. So more and more people started caring about speed and performance, which is great. However, this led to a lot of information flowing around the internet, not necessarily true and not necessarily the best way to do certain things. So I will try to summarize the entire process of optimizing a WordPress website and to give you as much hands-on advice as possible. So ideally, at the end of the webinar, you have at least a few takeaways that you can apply on your website right now. Although the focus of this webinar will be on the SiteGround services and all the improvements we have made and all the features we have developed for our clients. You can follow these principles, these practices, even if you're not hosted with us. Some things may be harder, may require more action, more services, but the idea is the same. So I hope that it will be useful even if you're not our client, and hopefully you will become one day. So without further ado, I will share my screen and show you an example website I have set for the needs of this presentation. This is a sample website I have created using the SiteGround starter. It's a portfolio website I will use to play with. Let's start from the very beginning. There are things that you can optimize on your website that does not require a lot of work and does not require any special testing, but can give you great results right away. Generally, when I start optimizing, when I start working on a website, you want to start with those things that require less time and that have minimal chance of breaking any piece of functionality that you have on your website. Another very basic thing is that you need to test your website, see how it performs, apply a change, test again, apply a change, and test again. Don't go and enable 5 different optimizations and then this way you increase the chance of something breaking and you have to troubleshoot 5 different things and you won't know what effect each of the optimizations you have made has on your website. So first, since we're talking about testing, the standard tool for performance testing is Google PageSpeed Insights. They have been working on this algorithm a lot. The tool is great and gives you a lot of useful information. There are a lot of tools out there like GTmetrix, which actually combines PageSpeed Insights with Yahoo Wiselow. There's Pingdom, there's Lightspeed, there's some web page grader and some other tools out there. However, I would recommend to start with PageSpeed Insights. Once you cover most of the things there, you should be good to go. And of course, once you believe you have done all your work on optimizing the website, you can test your pages with more and more websites. Another thing that's important is that don't test only your home page. If you have, let's say, a portfolio page, make sure you test it out too. If you have a store page, make sure you test your store. Make sure you test your single product page, your category page, the tags page, the checkout page. all those different types of pages that you have, you need to check each one of them and make sure they're optimized. So as I said, to begin with, start with the things that you can't go wrong with, that don't take a lot of energy and a lot of your time. Now, to begin with, you need to have an SSL certificate installed on your website. Most people consider SSL certificate as part of the security work they do on their website, but actually, if you don't have a valid SSL certificate, you can't benefit from the HTTP version 2 protocol. The HTTP 2 protocol brings a lot of improvements in the way data is transferred back and forth from your clients and your server. And it adds features like multiplexing, which allows browsers to download much more simultaneous resources at once. And generally, it's faster protocol, it's safer, and with now Let's Encrypt providing free SSL certificates to the world, you don't have any cost associated, because back in the days certificates were expensive, or at least they were all paid. Now with SiteGround, you can literally choose your domain name, the type of certificate you want to install, and just click a single button and get that certificate installed in a minute. Once you do that, you need to configure your application to work with through HTTPS, so you don't have any insecure content. I will talk about that just a bit later on. Another thing that you want to make sure is that you're running your website ideally on PHP 7.4. Now, it's worth your time to make sure that all the plugins you're using, your team, are working fine with PHP 7.4. It may seem a good idea to wait for PHP 8, which is about to come in December, but bear in mind that WordPress is still not compatible with PHP 8. Compatibility will be added in version 5.6. On top of everything, although PHP 8 brings even more optimizations and even better performance, it breaks a lot of backwards compatibility, and a lot of issues that used to trigger warnings will now trigger critical errors. This means that a lot of plugins, the majority of plugins and themes, will not be compatible to PHP 8 with PHP 8 for quite some time. Actually, from development standpoint of view, the work necessary to support it properly will be more than it was to move from the 5 branch to the 7 branch. So PHP 7.4 will be the best version you can have on your website for quite some time. It's really important to use it and to have it enabled on your account. This said, let's move to the website itself. We have developed a plugin called the SG Optimizer, which is designed to bring out the best of our hosting platform and to link your website with all the services we have developed and allow you to easily benefit from all the great optimizations we have set for you. And so you can have easily a WordPress website that runs great without having to use premium plugins, multiple different solutions that are usually designed to work on every hosting company out there. So that's a very basic and principal advice to make sure you're getting the best out of your hosting company. I mentioned this is the interface of the SG Optimizer. It is separated into a number of tabs. I will start with the easiest optimizations and the ones that have minimal chance of causing any issues whatsoever. Starting with the environment optimization tab, the first option is the ability to enable HTTPS and configure your website. Literally with one button, the plugin will change all the links, will reconfigure your website, and will force your traffic through HTTPS. This way, when you open the page, it will be you will see the padlock properly displayed, and there will be no insecure content. This way, you can make sure that you can be sure that your page is loading through HTTP2. I'm switching between browsers because I will show you later. Our dynamic caching is working only for non-logged-in users. But generally, this is the sample page we'll be using to optimize. Now we have embedded the Google PageSpeed test right in the plugin. The difference being the difference between that one and the one you can access directly from the page is that we have linked different optimizations we have here with and actionable items that you can click on and enable in the plugin, so you can fix this issue right away. Now, for example, to eliminate the render blocking resources, you need to enable the appropriate optimization from the front-end optimization tab. So it's a very good idea to go through the test here so you can get suggestions what to fix right away. As you can see, this page is already well optimized. This is straight out of the box. That leads us to another important and very basic rules. When you start building your website, always use a reputable team provider and make your research when you choose your team. The team handles the visualization of your website, which is the biggest part of the traffic, usually moving back and forth between the server and the visitor. So when you have a very well optimized team, like for example, this is Neve from Tmile, which is a great team, works really fast. And as you can see, without anything enabled, it scores really well on Google PageSpeed. That doesn't mean that this page is perfect, that this site is perfect, and you don't need to work on it. There are a lot of things that can be improved, but the foundation of having a great team is really important, because at some point, if you keep on optimizing a team that keeps adding bloat to your content, that keeps causing issues, that keeps adding an entire font of icons, for example, just because it wants to render a magnifying glass for your search, all that, it becomes much harder to fix such issues with plugins and services than to have them properly designed with speed in mind since day zero. So the environment optimization tab of the plugin handles first and most of all the HTTPS part, the security of your website, the forcing of all the traffic through HTTPS. Here you can see a few more options that you can enable. The first is the WordPress Heartbeat. It will allow you to configure the heartbeat, which is basically a ping that goes every 15 seconds by default on your edit pages, and every 60 seconds on the rest of the pages that WordPress uses to check for different things and whether there is a cron to be executed. However, if you have a multiple tabs open, imagine this causing another execution, eating resources, etc., etc. It's not the most dramatic performance optimization that you can make, but generally it's a good idea to either disable it on the pages you're not using it, or for example, if you want to keep using it on post and edit pages, to increase the interval that it's working to, let's say, 120 seconds, so you can still have things like automatic revisions saved, etc., etc. Now I will go to the Prefetch for external domains now, although again it's not a very significant improvement. If you're using scripts, let's say for Google Analytics or AdWords, advertisement network, or if you're loading another resources, any resources like, for example, from a CDN, from let's say Amazon CloudFront, You can add those domains here, so they're prefetched, and browsers know that they're going to be using that domain. They make the DNS lookup to that external host name and once, and then save that data so they don't do the lookup again and again and again. Use this only if you know what you're doing. Most probably you won't need it, but if you do need it, it's there for you at your disposal. We have added something called scheduled database maintenance. Having a slim, well-optimized database is very important. This will basically this will clear your trashes, will clear your spam comments, keeping your database in a very good shape. This way, your queries will be faster, and all the non-cached pages will generally work better and cause less load on the server. There are two more optimizations, Gzip and browser caching, that are handled by default on all SiteGround servers. So you don't need to add any htaccess rules or anything else. Gzip is enabled on SiteTools by default on all SiteTools accounts. If you're on cPanel, there is a button here that you can enable, which will add htaccess rules. Hopefully, we'll soon migrate everyone to SiteTools, so everyone will have this enabled by default. What Gzip does, it compresses the HTML output of your website once it's done, sort of like creating a zip file, and then transfers the compressed content through the network. On the other end, your visitor browser will decompress this HTML output before starting the rendering process. This lowers the amount of data that's being transferred back and forth, your server and your visitors, and has a great effect on your website. So Gzip is one of the safest optimizations that you can do. There is a little to no chance to break in anything, especially on WordPress. So that's one of the reasons we have it enabled by default. The next optimization that's enabled by default and handled by the Nginx direct delivery on our server is the browser caching. This is a set of tools, this is a set of instructions that instructs the browser to keep certain types of files, certain types of content cached locally for a certain period of time. The fastest place where your visitor can render any content is actually their own computers. So if you're not modifying certain image, it's a good idea to have those optimized. Now, we have followed all the proper Google standards and all the web standards, and we have came with a set of rules. So if your content is served from our servers, your visitors' browsers will know for how long to cache it. Now, I will be skipping tabs because, as I said, I'm starting from the optimizations that require least amount of work and that have minimal chance of breaking anything. So I will jump right to the media optimization. Now, we have the functionality to optimize all the new images that you add to your media library, and the functionality to optimize your existing images. Images usually present the biggest part of your website, and it's really important to optimize them. Of course, it's great if you have a expensive piece of software like Photoshop to save them for the web, to optimize them. But if you can't, you can use this. You can't always do that. You don't have to do it manually. With this optimization, there are a few things that are happening. We're choosing the best quality for the web. So this saves a lot of web space and and reduces the size of your images. So you actually transfer less data through the internet, and your pages load faster. And the next thing the optimization does is it strips all the metadata from those images, because for the web you don't need to have all that information where, for example, if you're uploading a photo made with your phone, you don't need to have the data where that photo was taken, what's the phone model, what time it was taken, which are the GPS coordinates it was taken, etc., etc. So all that information is being stripped of the images so they are as small as possible. This may not be a huge change in the size of the images if they're already optimized, but all that adds up to the total level of performance of your website. So it's 100 of small things that make it one website stand from another. You need to cover every different aspect of it. This leads us to the next couple of optimizations. The generation of WebP copies of new images. Now, WebP is a new format for of images developed by Google. Now, once you enable the optimization for new images and create a copy of existing ones, our servers will generate copies of your images right away. As you can see, it's already done because I don't have that many copies here. I will actually delete them, so you can see the page. This is another good friend of yours, the inspect element, the debugger tool in Chrome, and the network tab. Here I have disabled the cache, so I get everything anew from the server. And as you can see, this page is loading a number of images. I will open it again, and this time I will regenerate the WebP copies of the file. So while those are being created, our server makes a copy of each one of your image files in the media library, and it keeps the original file intact. So you can delete those and regenerate those with different level of optimization, either lossless or lossy. For me, 80% usually works great. Now, then what the service does, it checks whether the browser supports WebP, and if it does, it serves the WebP version of the image instead of the original one. So for example, if we go to the network tab again and we refresh this page, and we'll see that the images that are being loaded are the same. It's the -10.jpg, but actually the type of the page is WebP. So if we make a comparison between the two, you will see that which one is the bigger one. Number 8 is 68K, while the same image in WebP format is 42K. So the bigger the image, the bigger the savings, and this is one of the really nice optimizations. The thing is that Safari just started supporting WebP, so it will take some time until everybody updates their operational system to Big Sur. Before that, if they're on older version of Safari or their OS is older version, they will your clients will load the JPEG version of your page. Anyway, it's not a problem because our service will check whether the browser supports WebP, and if it doesn't, it will render the original image. This is a great optimization. If you have more images, if you have an image-rich website, it really saves a lot of time loading those images. On top of everything, we don't do any modification on the HTML. This is something running on the server. So as you can see, the original image name remains the same, but actually it's the WebP copy of that image that's being served with the proper MIME type. So it's a very smart implementation. You don't need to do any HTML editing whatsoever in order to benefit of this. Another optimization regarding your images is lazy loading. WordPress has introduced lazy loading in the latest version update. However, we still keep our own optimization in WordPress because we support more things like videos, iframes, and we have been supporting this for almost 2 years. and during that time we have cleaned and fixed all the inconsistencies, incompatibilities with a number of plugins that we have detected. So I personally believe that our implementation works better than the original WordPress one. And again, it's I think you already noticed that, but the easiest way is to open the book bar like this and just scroll down, scroll up or down the page, and you will see that lazy loading will start loading the images only when they're visible in the screen. So you're not loading at the very beginning of the page rendering process every single image that they have. You're only loading them when they reach this section of the page that the image is needed. Actually, it's very smart. It loads the images just a little bit before you scroll to them, so you may not visibly notice that lazy load is working. And as you can see, probably Crowdcast is breaking the quality, but as you can see, even if I'm scrolling faster, you can detect the lazy load because it's loading the images just before they become visible. However, you clearly saw that in the network tab and that this optimization is working really nice. So this covers the images, HTTPS, the latest PHP version, and at this point you have done most of the things that are super easy. As you can see, I was just enabling services. There isn't much room for error here. I'm not saying that what the rest of the things I'm doing is dangerous, but you should check your website after each one of them and make sure that some plugin, some part of the team is not misbehaving. Now let's go to the front-end optimization. Here are the optimizations that somehow modify the HTML output of your website. Starting with the HTML minification. This removes all the unnecessary data from your page source. As you can see, it removed, this is the HTML output of that same page. It removed all empty lines, all commands, spaces, saving those few precious bytes from the rendering process. This is one of the safest optimization in the front-end tab. Rarely there are issues there. However, certain plugins may do things like open a buffer, dynamically add scripts, dynamically generate content depending on something that executes in certain criteria. So there's always chance that some plugins may not work properly with this. So you have the functionality to exclude different URLs from minification. So let's say if you have online courses in /courses, you can just add courses and use the asterisk to exclude all those URLs from minification. The same thing we provide for JavaScript files and CSS files. So minification is relatively safe. It removes only comments, empty spaces, empty lines, all that data that's made for humans to read, but browsers don't need at all in order to render the code properly. Once you enable those, I recommend to go and check your website, see how it loads, see visually if there are issues, check the mobile version, see how it behaves, check the different types of pages you have, and see if anything went wrong. I urge you to do this after each one of these optimizations. Now, the next one is the combination of JavaScript files. What it does is it combines, it's pretty much self-explanatory, it combines all the JavaScript files that are working on your site. So it saves a number of requests. We do this again in a very smart way, and we preserve the order of loading JavaScript. But again, some dynamically generated content may something very specific for your plugin for your particular website may require to be kept outside of that combined file. So you can use the exclude combination functionality, and here you will see all the JavaScript added by the team and by the different plugins you have. Same principle goes for the combined CSS files. We combine all the CSS files rendered by your plugins and by the team. As you can see here, we have some coming from the plugin, some coming from the team. Now, if you see an issue with your website, use the exclude functionality. You're the best person to know your website. For example, if you have a portfolio plugin and something breaks here in the portfolio page, you will see the portfolio plugin you're using. Let's say our forms is breaking. I will obviously exclude the WP forms CSS if I see and notice an issue there. Don't disable the entire optimization, just the particular script that needs to be outside of it. The for render blocking JavaScript, this is probably the riskiest optimization. What we do here is we defer the loading of render blocking JavaScript files. A lot of plugins, a lot of teams add JavaScript to the head of your website where that JavaScript has to be completely loaded before the website proceeds with the rendering process of your pages. While we do this, when deferring them, they start working asynchronously. However, there are cases in which you may want to keep certain scripts loading in the head part, loading render blocking. So we have again functionality to exclude script from that optimization. This is very powerful optimization, especially if you have a lot of visual components like sliders, which are just throwing the header, but actually don't need to be render blocking at all. Note that usually you would need to exclude things like JavaScript libraries, like probably if you enable it and you have a lot of jQuery dependent stuff here working on your website, you may want to exclude jQuery from this optimization. Again, the basic advice remains the same. Enable an optimization, test your website. Enable optimization, test your website. That pretty much handles all the CSS, JavaScript, and HTML of your website. We have several optimization more. The first thing that is removal of a script that turns smiley codes into emojis. The second one is removes the query strings from static resources. For example, if your CSS files have a version appended to them, removing the version will make those files better cacheable on your visitors' browsers, and make them better cacheable on Cdns if you're using one. Next is web fonts optimization. What we do here is we preload by default all the fonts we detect your website is using. So they're preloaded and saved in the browser for faster rendering. On top of this, we rework the default way of embedding Google fonts. So they're loaded without causing a twitch on your website, but on the same time without breaking without render blocking the rendering process. So with this, as you can see, the website is still working. I don't see anything broken. Fonts are preloaded. Everything is loading fast. WebP is doing its job. Images are very small. nothing seems to be broken. However, we still haven't enabled the most dramatic optimizations we have. And this is the super caching settings. Here we have two caching mechanisms. The first one is the dynamic caching. Now, the dynamic caching saves all the data that your website has created, all the HTML output, and it stores that output in our Nginx reverse proxy. It's a full page caching, so and it is the fastest way to serve data. Now, when a request comes for a page, if that page is cached and it's served from the dynamic caching, it's served right from the Nginx reverse proxy's memory. The request does not even reach your web server. It does not even reach the PHP service. It does not reach the MySQL database. It does not cause queries or any load on your page. So this is the most powerful optimization technique, and it saves a lot of resources. So your website can handle much more visits on the same hosting plan, as well as it greatly improves the loading speed of your pages, because it practically it eliminates all the rendering of the PHP, of the WordPress framework, etc., etc. It's like serving a static page. Now, what we have here as an options is an automatic cache purge, which once enabled, the plugin monitors all the hooks in WordPress and purges the cache when you make any changes. So caching is a full page caching, and our dynamic caching is really powerful, but you want to make sure that it's purged when necessary. This is why we have two different types of functionality. The first one is to exclude different post types. Now, for example, this is very useful for people, let's say, who have LearnDash or something like courses, selling courses online, or event calendar, stuff like that. So you will see those post types there, so you can exclude them from the cache because they need to be completely dynamic. You don't want to have to serve one content to the same one content loaded by one user to the next one. So this functionality allows you to exclude the entire post types from the cache. The next one allows you to exclude URLs. For example, you want to exclude your checkout page, or if, for example, members, an asterisk will exclude all the URLs, including that. By default, we monitor a number of cookies of popular plugins like WooCommerce, Easy Digital Downloads, and more. And we exclude by default pages like cards, checkout pages, because those really need to be dynamic. You don't want to have a visitor filling up their data just to be cached by the service and then shown that data shown to a different person. We keep by default those excluded, but I would recommend that you always use the test functionality. Now, the test functionality, I will show you whether an URL is cached. For example, now the index page is cached, but if, for example, if we create a page called, I don't want to install WooCommerce because it will take some time, but for example, if we make a page called checkout and publish that page, once we exclude this page from caching, sorry, it should be here. Once we exclude that page and then you perform a test, you will see that this URL is not cached. So this page is completely dynamic. One more thing, we don't serve cache content to logged in users. This is very important because when users logged in, they always see content which is specific to them. So keep that in mind, that once a visitor logs in, they stop getting the cache content from the Nginx and they start getting your dynamic content. So this is why it is good to have your website optimized and not to rely just on caching, because your backend cannot be cached completely, your front end for logged in users. Once your WooCommerce clients add something to their cart, we started showing dynamic content too. And in those cases, you want to have your website fast, even if it's not cached. Now, browser-specific caching is a particular option, and you need to enable it only if you use a plugin to, let's say, a plugin to generate completely different content for mobile. If you have a responsive team, don't enable this, because it will start storing separate cache pools for each user agent, for each browser operations, combination of browser and operation system. And this will greatly diminish the cache to dynamic ratio of your website. So you will start surfing much more than dynamic content than cached if you enable it. So in some cases, this cannot be avoided, but for most websites, you don't need to enable this optimization. This leads us to memcached. Memcached is form of object caching. You need to enable it from SiteTools first, or cPanel. What it does, it stores objects. It stores objects in the memcached service. So when your database engine, the MySQL, stores an object, it gets stored in memcached, and then it's fetched much faster from there. Now, it is working great for all the dynamic content, and it will optimize your things like your once cached. It will optimize your WordPress backend. As you can see now, it works really fast, and once the cache hits up, you will see a very good improvement. Note that in certain cases, when websites are bloated, single object size can exceed a certain amount of a certain size, and it can slow down the execution of those checks and those queries from the memcached. So if you notice, if your website gets bigger, you get into hundreds of thousands of orders, products, etc. And if you start noticing your backend being slower, disable memcached and see how that affects it, how that affects your site performance, because its memory pool may not be enough, and you may need to, if you're on cloud, you may need to contact support so we can increase that, so you can store more data there. While on shared, we can't modify this setting. So it's a good idea to give it a try, and it's one of those things that may or may not have a great impact on your website, but in 99% of the cases, your backend will start working much better once the cache is filled. So for example, the post page is now super fast. As you can see, going back to it, it loads very fast. And the Edge Optimizer page is cached too. So that's that. So with this, we've went through all the optimizations on our site. Again, this here in this browser, I'm not logged in. While here, you can barely see that it's something loading. It feels like it's almost a locally stored page. So I will have this. I already had it tested once, but I will have it tested on Google PageSpeed. So let's see how that scores. When you test here, don't go for 100. Don't necessarily go for 100. It's good to have 100, but it's okay if you're getting 90. It's okay if you're getting 95. If your website loads under a second, if the time to first byte is under 200 milliseconds according to Google's recommendation, you're good. The tool tests a number of criteria, and it shows you mobile and desktop version. As you can see, we scored 99 on the desktop version, if I run the test again, it will probably come to 100 because the cache has to be generated. The first load is always dynamic. And what you will notice, what I'm certain a lot of people will ask, is why the mobile version is slower than the desktop version. The reason for this is that Google are throttling the speed to that website to generate the mobile view. So they are deliberately slowing down the internet connection. So they emulate a mediocre phone. And as you can see, those are very, very big numbers. It's okay as long as your website loads in a good amount of seconds. Make sure that that's okay. Desktop 99 out of 100. Obviously, we have done some proper job with optimization of this site. I'm not saying to ignore completely the mobile version, but usually it mostly depends on your team and the content that you're showing. So what I recommend would be to take a look at all the elements you're rendering on mobile and to see if you actually need those. Now, last but not least, I will briefly touch upon Cdns because I already saw some comments on that before the webinar even started. CDNs work in different ways. CDN stands for Content Delivery Network. Basically, your content is being distributed on a number of edges across the globe. So when visitors request your website, the content is delivered from that particular edge of the CDN that is closest to this visitor. For example, if you're loading it from North America, you will get it from their, let's say, a New York server, while if you're loading it from Europe, you're getting it from Amsterdam. CDNs like Cloudflare, like Amazon, like Google CDNs have a lot of endpoints and can greatly improve your content. What you need to know is that you need to know what level of caching you have on those edges, on those endnodes. For example, with Cloudflare, if you force your traffic through Cloudflare, but you don't enable the full page caching, what happens is that only your static resources are cached there. So the request, when a visitor makes a request, it first goes to Cloudflare. Cloudflare goes to the SiteGround server. SiteGround server produces the HTML output, whether it's from a cache or dynamic, gives it back to Cloudflare. Cloudflare renders that, and then and only then it starts saving loading time from by downloading your images, your CSS, your JavaScript files from the local endpoint. This saves time, but on the other hand, adding another layer, another step between your visitor and the content adds to the time to first byte, for example. So it takes more time to render the HTML and less time to load the static content that are needed to render that HTML. Now, that may actually slow down your website if you're loading it on the same continent. So if you want to have a truly global website, if your visitors are really from around the world, you need a CDN. But if you're targeting only Europe, if you're targeting only USA, you don't need that. You don't need a CDN. Just keep your server on the same continent. It's going to be fast enough. It's going to be faster. Now, I'm not saying that this is happening every time, and there's actually a very good workaround. Now, you may have full page caching on those edges. So what happens in that case is that when a visitor requests a page, if it's fully cached on the, let's say, Cloudflare edge on the same continent next to your city, the entire HTML output and all the static content will be delivered directly from that edge. So the SiteGround server will not even detect a hit. And this will be much faster. But if you only have the static resources cached on a CDN, you will be slower on the same continent. You will be faster on other continents, but slower on the same one. I hope that's a bit tricky. I hope that I made myself clear about it. With the SG Optimizer, you have the functionality to enable full page caching since the last major upgrade. Since 5.7, you can have full page caching enabled through the SiteGround Optimizer, and it really improves the way Cloudflare is working because by default they are caching only the static content. So that was the best of it, and I believe I have covered pretty much all the aspects. To sum up the optimization flow, start by testing your website. Don't go chasing scores. Chase actual results for your pages. Then start optimizing from the basis. Make sure you have an SSL certificate. Make sure you have the latest PHP version. Right now, 7.4 is the best version you may have your website running to. Then optimize the images on your website. Use the next-gen imaging formats. Go through each one of the front-end optimizations one by one. Minimize your content. Combine your CSS and JavaScript files. And make sure you enable caching. And do the caching part last, because otherwise you may have to clear the cache over and over again while you make changes. So I deliberately kept that optimization last, so you don't have to do this while you're working. And always, especially when you touch something that manages the front end, like JavaScript combination, even minification, it's a very, very good idea to test your website after each one of those.